All right, we're live. Um, Welcome back for another week of Facebook Live Tourney Talk. Sorry I missed you guys yesterday. Had kind of a last second little change in my schedule there. I kind of forgot that I was closing at work, so sorry. Had to change it to today, kind of offset that. But I didn't get a whole lot of submissions, but I got some stuff to kind of talk about and kind of go over. And then obviously, as people log in, hopefully they'll contribute and ask more questions, and we'll get a little bit more of a discussion going on. So kind of just winging, I guess, for the most part here at the beginning, since there's just a couple people on here. So I kind of wanted to do something open forum, just to give a quick kind of Q&A if anybody had any questions about anything related to fishing and that kind of stuff, especially like tournament stuff, co-angler and that kind of thing. Just to give people an opportunity. I know I get a lot of questions about it at work, and I've gotten some questions about it on here in the couple lives that I've done. But since the tourneys are a little bit lighter from here on out as far as the rest of the year, I'd like to be able to address some issues and stuff and talk about some things and questions and stuff like that that you guys might have as far as it relates to tournament fishing and whatnot, or just anything fishing related, really, from tactics or whatever. But yeah, any kind of topics or subjects that anybody would like to see covered or anything like that, please feel free to message me directly through my page or leave comments on any of these videos or anywhere on any of my posts about things that you'd like to see, and I'd be more than happy to kind of put something together for you and see where it goes from there. Obviously, there's kind of about one tournament a month for the next couple months. I do have two back-to-back in June, but it's one here in May, one in June, or two in June, and then one in July, and then I don't have anything until September. So there's plenty of dead time and downtime to do that kind of stuff. Plan on doing some videos and things like that. I'm going to work together with a buddy of mine, Curtis, who comes on here occasionally, and probably try to put some subject matter together, some videos and stuff for tips and just kind of fishing stuff, just to kind of entertain the dead time between and talk about some different lures and how to work them and things like that. So if there's anything like that that you guys would like to see in particular, feel free to contribute the same thing, send messages, that kind of stuff. Whatever, however, just get in touch with me if there's any kind of video that you'd like to see specifically covering like a tactic or a lure or, something to do with water or fishing conditions or anything like that. Just send me a suggestion there, and I'll be more than happy to try to throw a video together for you, or for everybody, really, because it helps us all. So, yeah, I guess we'll move on with it. Welcome, Justin. I see you logged in there. If you have any questions or anything you want to contribute, I know you've kind of been out of town fishing and stuff the last few days. I saw your posts. So if there's anything you want to contribute or have covered or whatever, feel free to jump it in there. All right. So we'll start off with Curtis had submitted a thing. Kind of stinks he's not here yet. He had submitted a question on one of the first posts about co-angler etiquette and stuff, which is actually could be a whole video in itself, just talking about it. So I'll kind of cover some of the quick things just to give a general idea, and then maybe later on we'll go in more depth and cover some more detailed, I guess, information as far as co-angling and kind of the etiquette that goes behind it. Some of the general stuff that's kind of come up with it. Hello, Colton. Welcome, sir. General stuff that you need to consider with it is basically you're in somebody else's boat, and obviously the boats are expensive for the most part. They're usually pretty expensive boats, and people got a lot invested in them, and plus the tournament and stuff like that too. So it's just a matter of trying to be generally respectful to their property. That's kind of a general, just think about it. When you're in somebody else's boat, how would you want somebody to be in your boat, and how would you want somebody to treat your stuff if it was yours? So being mindful of hooks and not tearing up seats and not dumping lure dyes on the seats or the carpet and stuff like that, trying to avoid those kind of situations as much as possible. I had said something in one of my previous videos about, using like the colored markers that have the garlic scent and stuff. Like those are great things to use as a co-angler because you don't have to worry about making messes with it and stuff like that. But just that's kind of a general thing to think about. As far as how it relates to the tournament etiquette and things like that, there's kind of a general, I guess you could say, unwritten rules and stuff like that, etiquette stuff that you need to consider. Like, don't cast towards the front of the boat if you're fishing out of the back as a co-angler. Try to be respectful of their water, unless that guy specifically tells you, hey, it's okay to fish up front, or cast towards the front, that kind of thing, which I've had a handful of guys actually do. Like, they'll be fishing way out front and they'll tell me like, hey, throw out front if you want, you're not going to bother me or anything like that, which, that's great when you get into those situations. Generally speaking, most guys are pretty accommodating and care that you're back there and want to see you succeed as much as they succeed on their own, which makes it nice. But you do have the occasional people that, are a little bit more intense about it and maybe don't consider you as much, which you'll have that, but just try to do the best you can do, make the best of it, and be patient with the whole situation. But yeah, just kind of pay attention to that kind of like invisible line in the halfway mark of the boat, that kind of thing. That's one of those unwritten things. There's other stuff like as far as like tackle and things that you're bringing on the boat. I've seen guys carrying like 2 bags, like one big tackle bag like I got with this one here, and then they'll carry like a big backpack too, and they'll have like 8 or 9 rods and stuff like that. You can do that if you feel inclined to do it, but to me, it kind of starts things off a little bit rough because guys see that and they're just kind of like, oh, here we go. My method of fishing is kind of keep it simple. Don't just, don't bring your whole tackle box. Don't bring everything you got. I got 7 boxes in here and I got 10 more boxes over and some pouches over here, but I don't need to take it all with me. So just try to simplify your fishing. Don't make it more complicated than it needs to be. Bring like one bag, like carrying 5 to 6 boxes is more than really you need. If you pack right and you kind of plan and use strategies for fishing and stuff like that. As far as seasonal strategies and stuff, you don't need to bring 20 boxes with you and stuff like that, and 16 rods and stuff. At the FLW tour level, they actually limit you to, I believe it's 7 rods total. So you can't even have more than that. But at our level, at the BFL level, and I think the Costa Series too, they don't have a limit on it, so you can bring as many as you want. Now, me personally, I try to limit mine to 5 or 6, and honestly, if I could get away with 3 or 4, I'd do it. But most of the time, I just don't feel quite comfortable enough or that confident in the areas that we'll fish and the kind of patterns that I have together or whatever to do that. But I try to keep it at 5 if I can, but there has been a few times where I've brought 6 with me. I've never gone over 6 just because it becomes a little bit more of a hassle to try to carry all that on the boat or on the boat. So as a co-angler, you're on the kind of starboard side, or not starboard side, but you're on the port side of the boat, and there's not much of a ramp there for rods. Usually it's maybe 8 inches wide or whatever, but you're basically stacking all your rods in a very small space. And if you bring more than 5 or 6, it tends to get a little tight. Some of the boats are more accommodating. Ranger boats, from what I've experienced, are kind of iffy. It just depends on the design of the boat. Some of the newer models, like the brand new models, are a little bit better. Seems like some of the late teen models, early 2010s, aren't quite as good as far as being, I don't know what it is about the way they're designed, but they just don't seem to hold rods as well. Some of the best that I've had experiences with are Phoenix boats and Triton boats. Seem to be, for whatever reason, the rods just seem to lay in there, and I could probably bring 8 comfortably if I wanted to. But just stuff to kind of think about. Try to minimize your tackle, minimize your stuff. Bring drinks with you, bring snacks with you and stuff. A lot of times boaters will offer water or whatever. I just like to bring my own stuff so I don't have to worry about it. There's been times where I've offered to buy ice or something, like come summer tournaments and things like that. It's not a bad idea to maybe offer to buy a bag of ice on the way to the ramp to meet your guy or whatever, if he wants an extra bag of ice, just to kind of help contribute to everything, because that ice can be used for drinks or it can be used to cool the water down to help save your fish, which is obviously kind of important in the summer tournaments because you get that warmer water and it's a little bit harder to keep the fish alive on them long days. So, offer to contribute to that. I've heard of guys saying, offer to buy drinks, water, Gatorade or whatever for your boater and that kind of stuff. I've even heard people say offer to bring breakfast and that kind of stuff. It's kind of up to you how far you want to go with it. wouldn't discourage any of it. It's just, like I said, it's up to you. I think most of the guys would probably turn you down for a lot of that stuff, but you might have a guy that, maybe he wants that, and it would help establish that relationship a little bit better and kind of get it started in the right foot, which may help you in the long run. So just stuff like that to consider. Big question that always comes up a lot of times, especially as a co-angler, is money, gas money and things like that. So I'll kind of cover it quick. I kind of base it on how I do in the tournament. At minimum, I give the guys typically $30. But I've heard people say give them 50, 75, $100. To me, the only way I would give $100 is if I was winning a lot of money at the tournament. So if I was to get like first, second, or third place, then I would be a lot more inclined to maybe give $100 to a guy if he was extremely accommodating to my fishing and helping me get, what I need to get the good finish. But I would say at bare minimum, give 30. A lot of times I'll give 40. If you're running lakes like Dale Hollow or Lake Cumberland, you're running from one end of the lake to the other, especially somewhere like Cumberland or, bigger Kentucky Lake, something like that. I mean, don't be afraid to throw 50, 60 bucks at them because it is a long haul to some of them runs. At the Kentucky Regional last year, the first day we made an hour and a half straight run all the way south on that lake. And that obviously burns a lot of gas. We had to buy gas while we were down there just to get back. So something like that, try to be accommodating and be understanding. Sometimes you'll get the boaters, they want to take the money. It just depends on the guy and how he is. I find with a lot of the older guys, they tend to just say, just keep it, don't worry about it, because they kind of have the attitude, I'm going to be here fishing anyway. It doesn't matter if you're here. If I can't afford to pay gas, then I shouldn't be here in the first place. But it's whatever. It's just kind of an etiquette thing, and we all do it, and I don't have a problem with it. I don't have a problem at all giving money to a guy to kind of help out and everything. If nothing else, that person might have taught you something, and you could kind of look at it as a guided trip. I know a lot of people look at co-angling as kind of a guided thing. They get into it just to learn more about fishing or tips or tricks or running a boat from the front, just to kind of observe that and then take that and go straight to the front of the boat in a year or two. But then you got guys like me that are just trying to earn their keep and work their way up and get more confident and make some money and kind of create more opportunities. That was my dog creating the earthquake there, sorry. He feels the need to chew on his bone right next to the desk apparently. But anyway, back on track. So it's kind of what you want to put into it. Obviously always try to be nice to the guy and, ask questions about where you're going to fish, what you're going to fish, the kind of areas you're going to fish. You don't have to get specifics because some of these guys will be pretty tight-lipped about it. But just ask general or try to get general information. That way you can kind of pack your tackle accordingly so you don't feel like you need to bring 20 boxes of tackle with you. I mean, if you know you're going to be fishing shallow most of the day, then pack mostly shallow stuff, whether it's plastics or crankbaits or jigs or whatever it is that you like to throw shallow. But don't be afraid to throw a couple things in there deep too, because the plan can always change. That doesn't mean you need to throw a whole box in there, but throw a couple deep dive crankbaits or whatever you like to throw deep. But I always try to have a conversation with them. From my experiences, I've found that they'll be a lot more open and kind of talk to you about what they're going to fish based on if you have somebody to practice with or not. So now that I've had a guy that I partner up with to practice and stuff like that, I've noticed that the guys don't tend to talk to me as much about what they're doing because they're afraid I'm going to go back and tell my guy, like, hey, they're catching them here doing this. There's a lot of that kind of stuff that kind of everybody's paranoid about, especially on the boater side of things, which, I understand. So be respectful of that. And obviously, if you have somebody that you practice with, be respectful of their information and the information that you guys figured out. Don't give away the farm to the guy that you're partnered with. Like, hey, we fished over here and caught them on this. With the guy that I practice with, both of them, because I got two different guys, I've always told them that I'll never give away their spots, and I'll always kind of just be general as far as like how I'm fishing or anything like that if somebody asks. Hello, Kyle. So I try to be a little bit respectful and mindful of that kind of thing. And it's the same thing. If you're in a multi-day tournament, there's actually rules in the FLW against giving information to the guys that you get partnered with in multiple days of a tournament, like the tour event and stuff like that. It's like at the regional, one day you might partner up with this guy, the next day you might partner up with this guy. Don't tell that guy where you were catching fish yesterday or whatever. I mean, if you want to talk about techniques and stuff like that, or tips, you know, or not tips, but just kind of strategies of what you guys are going to do, that's fine. But don't give away what that other guy was doing specifically, because that's basically against the rules. And it's kind of an etiquette thing, you know, a courtesy. Just try to use your head about what you're doing. That's kind of some of the generalized etiquette stuff. Obviously, there can be a lot more into that conversation and subject. If anybody has anything else that they want to know about or anything, just pop a question in there. If you go back and watch the video later or something, for those of you that joined a little bit later. Sorry, Justin, I'm just now getting to your comment. I wanted to kind of finish that conversation there. Moving up on the beds at Dale Hollow. Yeah, I'm guessing that's probably what's going to happen. It's decaf coffee because I have to work in the morning, so I'm not going to be up all night. I want something to drink. Yeah, but anyway, I'm supposed to go down to Lake Cumberland this weekend. I just actually got confirmation from a buddy of mine that has a boat. So we're going to go down to Lake Cumberland. I'm actually going to do a little pre-fishing before I do my pre-fishing. So there's probably going to be a ton of them on beds down there, I'm sure, too. We'll find out. So looking forward to that, just to get a chance to go down there. I mean, obviously fishing the tour event there, and then going down this weekend and doing some fishing, and then going down next week for practice and stuff Thursday and Friday. I feel like I could get some pretty good momentum on, you know, how to catch them down there. I mean, it's a home lake deal for me anyway. So got a little bit of confidence at that lake anyhow. So we'll see how it goes next week. Next weekend, of course, is Lake Cumberland tournament, the BFL. Be the third stop of the Mountain Division, so looking for a little keep this momentum going as far as moving up in the points in that division and stuff, and hopefully rebound a little bit and maybe get in check and having a good strong finish at Cumberland after the last couple of weeks there, and you know, this week coming up. So we'll see what happens. One of the next things that kind of came up, actually, Kyle, you're here now. This is something that you had asked. Kind of goes back to a little bit of the etiquette talk that I was just saying. For like fishing from the back in different situations and things like that, as far as baits and, you know, whether or not you have to throw different stuff, or if the guy in the front's going to leave you sitting out in the middle of the water, that kind of stuff. Generally speaking, those guys don't really strategy too much like that. They do, I think when you get into higher levels, they do consider it as far as not burning out their areas with both of you fishing it, like it's a tour event. Like with Terry and stuff, we didn't really fish that same bank more than twice because I think he wanted to save it for the next day if he made it, because he felt like he had a pretty good chance of making the third day. So that kind of stuff will happen. But as far as like keeping you out of it, being able to fish it and stuff, I think it depends on who you're with, honestly. There's some guys that are going to be a lot more accommodating, and then there's some guys that are going to be a lot more protective of the water that they're fishing. So you kind of have to be mindful of that, and like I said, be respectful to it. I was having a conversation with somebody about his experiences and stuff, and they went into a small cut, and he started fishing. Like, they were fishing down one bank, and he started casting over the other bank, and the guy in the front kind of got mad at him, like, we're going to go around this cut and come back out on the other side, so please don't fish on that side. So kind of using common sense, I don't want to say common sense, but kind of using courtesy like that to think about where you're going, or if you're not even sure, like, ask, you know, like, hey, are we going to go all the way around this pocket? You know, because you don't want to do something like that and then step on his toes and upset him because you're fishing water. Maybe you catch a fish or something, and then that makes him mad, because then that could make it awkward the rest of the day. So just try to be mindful of that kind of stuff. You can throw any bait you want. If you want to throw the same bait, you can throw the same bait. None of them are going to say anything bad about it. If anything, it's usually not a good idea to throw the same bait, just because you're not going to be able to catch fish behind them throwing the exact same thing, unless, like at Lake Cumberland, where they were just eating spinnerbaits that good that it was worth my while to throw the same bait, and I still managed to catch some fish. So kind of take it situation by situation, but definitely you can throw, if they're throwing crankbaits and catching fish, then you can throw crankbaits and catch fish. There's nothing that says you can't. Just don't throw over their line or tangle up with them and that kind of stuff, because they'll get mad about that. But I would say, like, as far as that goes, I've only had, I think, 2 guys that were not all that accommodating when it comes to fish and water and kind of keeping me in the back and cutting me off on the bank and stuff like that. But other than that, I've really not had huge problems with it. So like I said, most people keep it pretty open. They don't really call it, like the term would be like front boating you, basically is kind of what you call it when you get a guy that leaves you out in the middle of the water or something. A situation where you might incur that would be like with Lake Cumberland coming up next week and all the fish moving up on beds. It's a good possibility, or at least a fair possibility, that that could happen to me, because when they're fishing beds, they typically want to keep that water to themselves, and they don't want you casting in there because they can see the fish, they know where the fish is, and it's the easiest that it gets when it comes to finding fish. It may not be easy to catch them, but it's at least easy to see them, so they tend to protect those areas a little bit more. I've not had to experience it in a tournament situation yet. Most of our tournaments that we fish don't fall weather-wise in that spawn time. It's usually right before or right after. Always seems like that real true spawn, like the biggest part of it tends to be over by the time we fish our tournaments. But this year with Cumberland, it's obviously the spring that we've all had. It's going to be a different story. So kind of makes me a little bit nervous going into the tournament that could happen to me. But in the same sense, I'm hopeful that maybe I'll partner up with somebody that'll let me pick off some of the smaller ones if they're on beds. You don't know how it's going to go. Because typically when they're on beds and stuff, I mean, they're right there in about 3 feet of water, 2, 3, 4 foot of water, or whatever. If it's clear enough, you can easily see them, and it's not hard to find beds. Because I'd never really had a whole lot of experience with it until last year, practicing and stuff with the guy that I practiced with. We were looking for a lot of beds, and I got to really kind of see what that looks like in the water. And you can see them. I mean, once you know what you're looking for, it's easy to spot a bed. And usually it's a clean patch that's just about the size of like a cereal bowl, maybe a little bit bigger. Obviously, depending on the fish. I mean, there's some areas like in Florida where they'll have giant, like basketball-sized beds. But most of them that I saw, like Cumberland and stuff, were about the size of like a big cereal bowl, probably about like, I don't know, maybe about like that big. And you could see it because it would be like muddy, and then you see this clean, like white rocky patch or whatever kind of in the middle of it, where they fan it with their tails and kind of clean that area off for spawning purposes. So, and then once you see one, then it makes it a lot easier to see others, and you'll see them all down the bank. And it's anywhere from, I've seen them on the side of bluff walls. I saw a smallmouth spawning in about 4 foot of water one year at Cumberland and on a bluff wall. And I've seen them spawning in flats in the back of little coves and stuff. So, I mean, really, ideally, it's anywhere that you get like that pebble rock or rocky kind of bank, that kind of stuff. Hang on a second, Toby. Anywhere you get like those kind of clean rock banks and smaller pebble rock and stuff like that, that's kind of where you tend to look for those kind of situations. The bed. I guess somebody's walking by my door. Hey. Hang on a second. I hope we're all awake now. Are you okay? Are we okay? All right. Sorry about that. Anyway. So yeah, look for them in shallower water, like the backs of your creeks and your longer, flatter kind of coves and cuts and stuff. That tends to be where the best opportunity, anywhere that's kind of protected from the elements, like whether it's wind or a lot of waves or weather, that kind of stuff, that tends to be the best places because they want that clean water so that the sun can penetrate through, because that's important to the whole livelihood of the eggs and the development and all that stuff. They need to get that heat and things like that. That's why they always wait until you get to that 55 to 65 degree water mark as far as the temperature in the water before they start spawning, because they need that. It varies in different regions of the country as far as what temperature they spawn at, because you got like Florida strain bass, which are primarily down south. They'll spawn in colder water maybe than you'll get up here, or warmer water, I'm sorry, than you'll get up here, because they're used to spawning in colder water up here because it doesn't get as hot. So, and obviously time of year. I mean, they'll spawn in Florida in January, February, whereas you're just now starting to see them move up on beds in southern Kentucky, almost May. So usually it's towards the end of April, May. But I've had them spawning up here in Ohio at the end of April, but that was a mild spring. So I think we're still about 2 to 3 weeks away from spawn starting to happen in most areas up this way, as far as Ohio anyway. Southern Ohio, not like Cleveland or anything. But anyway, let me see what you said there, Toby. What am I throwing in, like hard, like crankbaits, you mean? Crankbaits, I'm throwing kind of a 1.5 flat. I don't have any up here. Lipless crankbaits, that tends to be more jerkbaits. That kind of stuff is more this time of year because that's just a better kind of imitator. I like the smaller baits because the forage tends to be smaller. Because it's not really, I guess you could say, grown up that much over the winter. As far as soft plastics and things, I mean, the creature baits, I mean, as you've seen on some of my other lives, for those of you that have seen them, this is probably my favorite bait to throw really any time of year. But this time, for whatever reason, this spring, this bait has been just dynamite. I think I've caught more fish on this thing this spring than I've ever caught, like, in an entire year before. Now, I've probably fished it a lot more because I keep catching them, so I got confidence in it now. But it's the Rage Structure Bug by Strike King. This is the regular structure bug, and then you have the Magnum Rage, which is what I was throwing at Dale Hollow and stuff. This is the one I was throwing at Cumberland on that Trocar shell buster head. But as far as soft plastics, this is kind of more what I've been doing. Guys do catch them on worms like finesse worms, shaky head. I'll show you those. That one's kind of big. Let me get a smaller one. I've got one here somewhere. This one here. Not this color, but this is the Strike King Fat Baby Finesse. But like this is a good one that I like to use for like shaky heads and stuff like that. She's got like that. I like it because it's got that little bulb on the bottom with that cup on it. So it tends to catch water and kind of stand up a little bit better in the water. But like color just depends on where you're at. Green pumpkin, blues like this could be good for like dirtier water. Maybe you can't really see it. It's kind of like a dark blue purple color. But like your green pumpkins, your watermelons, those kind of colors. I've had a lot of luck with watermelon seed color at Lake Cumberland, which is kind of like that translucent green with the black pepper kind of sparkles or flake in it, I guess you could say. But that's kind of general for plastics. Swim baits were pretty big at Cumberland. I've thrown a little bit of them, but usually the smaller ones, like the 3 1/4s or 2 1/2s, those kind of smaller swim baits on lighter jig heads, like 1/4 ounce, 1/8 ounce jig heads, seem to be the trick this year. But hard bait wise, I mean, it's anything crankbait, square bills. This is kind of similar to the 1.5 flat. This is a mega bass flap side, but it's that smaller kind of profile bait with the flat sides. That flat side kind of gives you a good kind of vibration in the water because it really rolls and gives a lot of vibration to the bait, which can kind of help get that reaction strike out of the fish. But I'd say that, the lipless, and the jerk bait's probably my 3 favorite hard baits this time of year. Once it starts warming up, I'm 5XD, 6XD, deep dive crankbaits all day long. Definitely. If you can find them out deep, that's my preferred way to catch fish, honestly. So hopefully, Kyle, I answered your question about kind of what you were trying to get at, I think, with the situations and fishing and stuff and kind of the strategies of the pros and the co's and stuff like that. It can affect them as far as like positioning. If you're with somebody that's sitting up higher and you're fishing a multi-day tournament and that guy's ranked higher after the first day, he's going to be a lot more inclined to take care of himself more and compete. So it can be a little bit tougher on you. Whereas if you're with somebody who's maybe out of it or a little bit lower, maybe they'll be a little more accommodating to you. Like if you have somewhere that you want to try fishing or a particular way you want to try fishing, stuff like that can kind of work out to your advantage, but it can also be a disadvantage too, because I've experienced where somebody out of it was kind of a disadvantage because they weren't as into it. So they weren't trying as hard. They weren't moving as fast. They weren't kind of getting us to where we needed to be faster because they weren't into it. You know, their heart wasn't in it. They weren't really competing. So it made it harder for me as somebody that was closer to the edge of, you know, having a good finish and making the cut for the third day and stuff, to try to maintain that intensity and be able to do well, because it's tough when you get behind somebody like that has that kind of attitude to stay focused. you know, on your own part and do your thing. If you're not careful, it can get in your head. I think I did a pretty good job of kind of shutting them out after a while. But at first, when I first started to notice it, it was just like, what is going on? But, you know, as it went on, it made it a little bit easier. He's kind of got a plan for that kind of stuff. Like I said, all kinds of personalities, all kinds of people. You're going to have good experiences, you're going to have bad experiences. But if you're an open mind and worry about doing what you got to do to try to compete on for you, without obviously alienating or doing something rude, you'll be all right. You'll be able to compete pretty consistently, I think. That kind of answers everything I had written down from messages and stuff that I had received. I kind of open it up like what Toby asked. You know, if there's anything that anybody wants to cover or any other questions that anybody has, feel free to fire them off. It does take a second for it to come through, so try to be patient a little bit. If you type it and send it and I don't answer it in a few seconds, it can take 15, 20 seconds before I even see it. So I'll try to be a little accommodating to that. These are what the shell busters look like in the package. I'm not sure where you can get them in store yet. I know they don't have them at Cabela's. They have them online. You can get them online at Cabela's. You can get them online at Bass Pro Shops and Tackle Warehouse, places like that. But I've yet to find them in store anywhere, unless like there's a local tackle shop that has them. They are new. They just came out with them last year. That's the 1/2 ounce. It comes with a 5/0 hook. And then I've been using the 1/2 ounce and the 3/4 ounce. In case you guys didn't get a good look at it earlier this year, I've caught so many fish on this. I've got a lot of confidence in it, and I feel like everybody should be throwing it. It's just one of those things. But that's kind of what it looks like. You can see it's got a little flat head. So I'm going to do a video with this bait later on in the year. I got a lake up here. It's got pretty clear water, so I'm going to be able to do some underwater footage with it. But I was kind of playing with it the other day. Took it out on the lake, and you could see 10, 12 feet down in the water because it was so clear. And I was kind of playing around with it just to see what it looked like under the water, to see what it was doing. Obviously, you have your theories and your thoughts about what it is, but I was pretty impressed, to say the least. Because you figure something like that with that flat side, it's going to stand up, but you know, you kind of, if you're like me, you kind of wonder how much it actually does stand up in the water on rocks and weird terrain like that. But this thing would stand up literally. I was throwing this same one. I mean, it would stand up, and these legs would just, it was perfect kind of crawfish defensive posture. I mean, it was sitting flat on the ground. The legs were up, and of course the way this bait's designed with the cups on the legs, and the legs are so soft, and with the salt and everything in them, they kind of floated, so they didn't really fall back down or anything. They literally just sat there in that permanent kind of defensive position. It was picture perfect for what you would expect or what you'd want out of a crawfish imitating bait. And I would just hop it, and every time it would land just like this, like that exact same kind of position with the legs up and everything. So I can see why it was such a successful bait, because crawfish this time of year obviously is a big deal. For those of you that don't know, I've done a little bit of research on it. I've watched a video with a guy that actually did like a 2-year study on crawfish and stuff. And he was talking about just patterns and, you know, kind of the whole way thing that how crawfish kind of live their lives and stuff like that. And this time of year is when they start coming out of hibernation. So they basically hibernate over the winter in the cold weather. And once that water and temperature starts getting up in that 50-degree marks, when they start getting active, and then you get a full moon and it really starts to get them active. So if you're like in that 52 to 55-degree range, kind of typically speaking, and you get that full moon that comes through, then that's going to really get them crawfish kind of fired up and get them active and moving. They're going to start moving out of their burrows and going out and basically start their mating rituals and things like that. So that's kind of what keyed me into the first Dale Hollow tournament, because I knew the water temperatures going into it were in that 50-degree range. Obviously, we found some that were actually up in the 60s, but it was in that lower 50 to mid 50 range. And then we had a full moon. I think it was like that Wednesday. It was like the first day of the full moon. So obviously that's going to carry for 3 days. So I knew that the crawfish were probably going to be active. Dale Hollow is a real big crawfish kind of lake as far as baits and the forage and stuff for the fish. So that's kind of what kept me into that. And sure enough, when we went down there and practiced, I mean, that's how I was catching all my fish, was through crawfish colored crankbaits and soft plastics and things like that. I mean, it was just like you couldn't have written it any better as far as having a plan going into it and then actually that plan working. Unfortunately, it just didn't get to work in the tournament because I got partnered with a guy that took me in some water that wasn't really working as well for me with the baits that I had picked out. But that's how it goes too as a co-angler. So co-angler life, as I say. So Kyle, let's see what you got here. How often do you get to use your own boat? I actually don't have my own boat right now. That's kind of the purpose behind all the tournaments this year, was to try to get myself in a situation where maybe I could start getting into my own boat. If you fish as a boater, you use your boat every time. There's never a situation where you don't use your own boat. If you fish as a co-angler, you never get to use your boat. So even if I buy a boat and if I fish as a co-angler or continue to fish as a co-angler, I don't get to use my boat in the tournament, but I can use my boat to practice and I can be on tournament waters in my own boat. There's no restriction on that as far as that goes. I can do basically anything I want. I just can't compete unless I pay to entry as a boater. If that kind of answers your question. I don't know if you were going somewhere else with that, but otherwise it's, you can use it anytime. There are situations where if there's not enough co-anglers, they will take a boater and move them over to the co-angler side. That tends to be, that can be a little frustrating for people. That's why we try to link up together. Co-anglers and boaters try to link. Just to kind of explain that, FLW has a thing where you can link with another guy that's a boater. So in my case, the guy that I practice with, or both the guys that I practice with, I link with both of them. So what we do is when we register, when you initially register, if you got somebody lined up before the season starts and before you pay for all your tournaments, you can actually put that person's member ID number into your registration. And then if they do the same thing on their side, then it automatically links you guys together. You're guaranteed to be in that tournament as however you signed up. So if you're a boater, you'll be a boater. Co-angler, you'll be a co-angler. You're guaranteed to fish that tournament. Nothing's going to basically eliminate you other than some unnatural act or sickness or something. In my case, I've actually found my links after I've already paid for the tournaments. So what I have to do is I have to go back, and the week before the tournament, like this coming next week, Monday morning, I'll call FLW home office, confirm my link with them. You can tell, like I told him at the beginning of the year, like me and him, this guy, were going to be linked up for all the tournaments the rest of the season. But I still call, he still calls every Monday or the week of the tournament just to make sure we're good to go, because obviously you don't want to miss it and then somebody get kicked out or he gets moved over to the co-angler side or something like that. So we always call on Monday and confirm with FLW. Just call down there, hey, I'm confirming a link for the Mountain Division tournament, whatever. And then they'll be like, okay, got it. And that's all you do. And then you're good to go. You're both guaranteed to fish as co-angler and boater, and you don't have to worry about anything. So that's kind of a relationship that you want to try to develop as you move into it if you're starting to fish as a co-angler. If you have somebody to fish with that fishes as a boater, that's even better. But if you make those relationships through people that you partnered with through tournaments or however it is, it's beneficial for both of you, because you can have somebody to travel with, you can have somebody to practice with in a lot of cases, or you can have somebody to link with, so you're at least guaranteed in, because they do their guarantees as far as for tournaments and stuff based on priority entries. So if you're paid for all 5 tournaments for the same division and you paid the first day they were available, then you're going to have priority entry over somebody that paid 2 weeks before the tournament and they're only paying for 1 tournament. So if there's not enough boaters, you're more likely to get in than that person. You'll get confirmed before that person. So I always try to pay for all mine up front. That way you can get them all paid for as early as possible, and then I don't even have to worry about it in case I don't have somebody to link with. But luckily I had somebody to link with, so it wasn't an issue. Oh, there's Curtis. I already covered your question, Curtis. Sorry. You missed out. You're going to have to go back and watch the video. Talk about how I use kayak to practice. I don't like to use the kayak to practice, obviously, because you can't cover water as easily. But with the tour event and kind of the way things shaked out, I think I covered it in my last video as far as I was supposed to have somebody to practice with, but they ended up not being able to compete for family reasons, family medical reasons, I guess. So he couldn't come out and compete in the tournament because he has a boat and so I lost that ability to go out on the water and kind of pre-fish. So obviously I didn't want to go sit down there for 3 days and not fish at all. I wanted to at least try to get some idea, and there are ways around it as far as being able to practice and things like that. So what I did is I drug my kayak down there. I got a older style 12-foot sit-in kayak that I've rigged with a Piranha Max, Humminbird Piranha Max 4 down imaging fish finder. Actually, I can show you because I got it off the boat right now. I can keep from knocking the table over. I wonder if I can find where I put it. I don't know where I put it. There it is. It's hidden. Here it is. There. So this is kind of my setup. This is called a cell block. It's made by Yakutech. It houses the battery. So let me show you the other side. There. So there's the battery that powers the fish finder. I can actually turn it on here. Might not be able to see it just because of the way the light works, but if I scoot it back. Yeah, so see, there it is. It's in simulation mode, but it's got down imaging, and it's also got traditional 2D sonar on it as well. But I use that on my kayak. Let me turn this off real quick. So kind of how I approached it as far as at Lake Cumberland and stuff was to fish some different water. Obviously, you don't know where you're going to end up going. So the first day I went up clear back in the back part of, or at least the back third of Wolf Creek, shallower water, a lot more gravel, a lot of brush and stuff in the water and things like that. So what I did is I kind of took it out there and went with it as far as just throwing the creature bait and spinner bait and just trying to find something that works. So it's all man powered, so you're kind of limited. I can go about a mile and a half one way, so like 2-3 miles round trip. About the limit of my energy level as far as being able to fish and paddle and do all that stuff. But you can cover a lot of different waters. So in an effort to be efficient, I tried covering like some of the main channel areas, working points and flats, and then work some like secondary points and some small cuts and coves and things like that. Spent about 6 to 8 hours every day that I went out. But it allowed me to kind of get familiar with the water. So I got to see that the water was dirty and kind of how much of the brush was in the water. You could see the water line where the water was dropping. And then also you could try to find out baits and stuff that maybe they were biting. So the first day was a lot slower for me. The second day I moved a little bit further down the Wolf Creek arm towards deeper, generally deeper water, deeper area of the creek, probably about halfway out of it. And then I went across into another creek arm that has a lot more brush and trees and things like that in it. Something a little bit more like what I figured I'd be fishing, probably with deeper water close by. I mean, the water on the way over was as deep as 80 to 90 feet deep. And then once I got into the creek arm, generally it was 30 feet, I think, out in the middle of the creek arm that I was in. But that's where I kind of figured out the pattern. So just, like I said, I practice the same way as I would from a boat, in the sense of like the baits and kind of using the patterns, the seasonal patterns and conditions that you see in front of you. So none of that's different. The only difference is I can't cover near as much water. So I try to cover more situations, I guess, like whether it's deep walls, bluff walls, flats, secondary points, that kind of stuff. Get the situations that you're going to see more of and cover more of to kind of get exposure to those different areas. So I caught some that way, fishing some secondary points. I actually got a couple bites on some secondary points and some cuts, and got a bite on some of the trees that were out in the middle of the creek arm, that kind of thing. So then later that afternoon, I went back out and I took it further down the creek into like the deeper, cleaner water. So down by Wolf Creek Marina, which is basically the front third of the creek arm, water was a lot clearer. It's a lot deeper. If you get out by the marina, it's actually about 100 foot deep. I was staying more in a little bit further in from that, but still, because of the way that the bank is kind of transitioned and built, you don't have as much chunk rock. It's more bluff walls and that kind of stuff. So that kind of gave me a chance to kind of see what baits would kind of work in that area. So as far as the kayak, using it to practice, it's not ideal, but I tried to use it in different areas of the lake so I could cover different types of water as best I could with the time and the limitations that I had. Anybody else got anything or any more questions about kayak stuff? Like I said, I like to use the depth finder and stuff. The down imaging is great. It's awesome for around here. Some of these little lakes and things around here, it's kind of fun to use it just to be able to see some structure and trees and stuff under the water that you normally wouldn't see or really even get a chance to fish, because most places I take it are typical places that a lot of people bank fish from. So you can get a lot of good catches that way too, because the fish aren't used to being fished from that angle. From out in the middle of the lake, they're used to being fished from the bank. So there's advantages to kayak fishing for sure, especially if you live around this area. I'm sure there's a lot of areas like in Kentucky even, or Tennessee, or just anywhere you could probably find those areas where kayaks are a lot more beneficial, fishing in rivers and gravel pits and stuff like that. That's where I like to use them anyway. Don't everybody talk at once. You got anything you want to say, Curtis, since you're late to the game? It's all quiet. Dog's not freaking out now. So I guess we can wrap it up then, if nobody else has anything. Give it a couple seconds in case something pops up here. But we've been going for about 45 minutes, so hopefully I answered some of the questions and covered some stuff that maybe you guys didn't know about, or helped you learn something or whatever it is. Like I said, if you have any questions or any topics that you'd like to see covered for future purposes, feel free to drop me a message through the Facebook page, on here, or any of my posts anywhere, Instagram, any of that stuff. Drop me a message about what you'd like to see kind of covered or whatever, and we could do a whole Facebook Live about it. Because I got a lot more downtime coming up. Like I said earlier, plan on going out with Curtis and doing some videos and stuff, kind of informative things, whatever. If there's anything like that you'd like to see done as far as a video, shooting out and fishing and that kind of stuff, feel free to drop me a message or talk to me, get a hold of me somehow and let me know, and we'll see what we can do and kind of discuss it and see what the possibilities are as far as creating something that everybody will get something out of. Because I want to try to give more as far as helpful and things like that, especially from a co-angler's perspective, because I don't think there's a lot of that information out there. I know it was kind of hard for me to find a lot of it. I had to do a lot of research just to get all the information that I've managed to get. So I'd like to be able to use my knowledge and share it with all of you. If any of you have questions about tournament stuff, like I said, I've probably been asked, I think, 3 different times this week, and had hour-long conversations with customers at work about how to get started into co-angling and some of the stuff that I encounter, and just talking about it, and fishing and tournament fishing and stuff like that. I think it's a hugely growing thing with the addition of high school and college and all that stuff, and there's scholarships now available for fishing, and it's growing so much, and there's a lot of people that have a lot of questions about it and want to get involved in it in some way. So like I said, if there's anything like that you have questions about, or you'd like to see me talk about, or whatever it is, feel free to drop me a message or anything. I plan on putting a couple feelers out, a couple posts talking about things as far as like for video content and stuff, especially once I get past this next tournament, because I'll have, I think the next one is June 16th after this, so I got 6 weeks between tournaments. So with the nicer weather and stuff like that, hopefully we can maybe shoot a video or two in between to kind of occupy everybody's time. Walmart promotions, so I can cover that real quick. FLW does a thing where they partner up with Walmart every year for what they call the ambassador program. So it's National like Boating and Safety Week is the first week of June every year, and as part of that, the FLW and Walmart get together and they ask for volunteers from us anglers for people to go out into the Walmart stores and kind of talk about fishing with customers, with kids. Some of the stores will actually set up some interactive games and stuff like kids casting into a pool, that kind of stuff, to actually kind of accommodate it and just basically make awareness for fishing and stuff like that for kids and, like I said, for adults too. Last year was my first year getting involved with it. I went down to Wilmington, Ohio, the Walmart down there, and basically just go in there for like 2 hours. Walmart sends or not Walmart, but the FLW sent out a box with a bunch of free giveaways and stuff, from license holders to stickers to coupons and information about tournament fishing and stuff like that. And we take all that with us. I partner up with my sponsors, try to get some stuff to give away as well. Last year, I got with Hurag and they gave me a bunch of the neck gaiters to give out. And then I also partnered up with P-Line and they gave me some free line samples to hand out as well. Obviously, with a couple more sponsors kind of getting involved this year, I'm hoping to maybe get some more stuff to hand out. I haven't quite reached out. I've just started to send the emails out to some of these sponsors and stuff to try to see basically if they want to contribute anything or give anything available. So I'm hitting up, five stores this year. So I'll be everywhere from Huber Heights to Inglewood, the Vandalia Miller Lane Walmart. I'll be in Centerville. I think there was another one, Beaver Creek. I think is that 5? I don't even know. But I'll be doing 2 hours each one. I do one store on Friday. I don't know what the schedule is yet as far as which stores, what days. But I'll definitely be posting about it once I receive the information from FLW. But and they finalize all that stuff. But it'll be 2 hours each day. I think most of them are in the evenings from like 3 to 6 p.m., 7 p.m., somewhere around that time frame. I tried to get a little bit more a later time frame than what I did in the last one, so that there'd be more customers to actually be able to talk to and interact with. But it'll be one on Friday, and then I got 2 Saturday and 2 Sunday. Like I said, it's for 2 hour periods. Come by. Like I said, there'll be some giveaways and stuff like that. I'll post a schedule, so there's one close to you guys. Feel free to come by and hang out for a little bit, and we can talk some more fishing in person or whatever. But like I said, I'll have free stuff to give away as well, which is always good and fun. But I know I'll be at the Miller Lane, the Beaver Creek, the Centerville, Huber Heights stores, and I think the Inglewood was the other one. But it'll be the 5 stores there. So you got that to look forward to. It's like June 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, whatever that Friday, Saturday, and Sunday is. It's either 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, or 2nd, 3rd, 4th, something like that. But that'll be that first week in June. And then I'll have tournaments June 16th and the 23rd. And I might have a couple local tournaments I do around then too. I'm not sure yet. Still waiting for confirmation from a guy at work. And that's about it. Anybody have anything else or any questions that they'd like to ask before we sign off here? Looks like a couple more people kind of joined up here at the last second. Kind of late to the party, but if there's anything anybody wants to talk about, we can keep it going. I'll keep it going as long as you guys want to talk. I don't have a problem with that. I'm not going to stay up until midnight, but it'll be reasonable. But if there's any other questions or whatever, like I said, if anybody's got suggestions for videos, that's more where we're going to start running with this, with the summertime and the slower stuff. Try to get some promotional videos done and things like that. Hopefully that's something that you guys want to see as far as content. Might take a little bit of work, but I should be receiving the first order for All Heart, the apparel. I should be getting some shirts in here next week. I believe it's Tuesday next week. So I'll be putting a store up. I'm not sure if we're doing a website for the store initially or if we're going to do it through Facebook, but they will be available online, hopefully within the next 2 weeks. So if anybody's interested in getting a shirt that doesn't know me personally, you'll be able to order it through that. Once I get it up, I'll post a link on my fishing page here and stuff like that so you guys can look into it. Shirts I'll have already made for the most part. The hats are going to be basically made on demand. So if anybody orders a hat, it might take a week before you can actually get the hat in your hands. that's kind of the initial plan with everything. But like I said, I'll give more information as we get closer to getting something live and online with it. But we do have the initial order of shirts coming in next week. So that'll all be happening very soon. And for those of you that have ordered stuff, I'll have it next week. Might not be able to get it to you till the week after because of going to fish tournament and stuff, because I'll probably be leaving Wednesday night, more than likely. Wednesday night or Thursday morning to go down to Cumberland. So might have to wait a week, but it's coming. I guess there isn't anything else. I don't see anything else popping up here. So I guess we'll sign off for the night. Probably won't be able to do one next week with the travel and everything else, but obviously after Cumberland, we'll do one the week after that. And then from there, we'll just have to kind of wing it. And I'll try to do one at least every other week, if not every week, between tournaments as we start getting into the slower time. So like I said, feel free to reach out, say hello, share it with your friends. Get people involved in this. It's something that's kind of beneficial for all of us that take part in it and talk about it and stuff like that, so we can all learn something. So thank you guys for tuning in. Thanks for participating. Thanks for the messages and the questions that you guys did send in and submit. Curtis, I'll get a hold of you to get you a hoorag, as promised. And Kyle, you as well. I'll send one out to you. So I'll get you guys' information so I can kind of figure all that out at some point here. All right, so have a good night, and we'll talk to you soon. Keep your eye out for the posts. They'll be coming next week, I'm sure, and probably this weekend with going fishing and stuff down at Cumberland. Hopefully I'll have some stuff, and if I get some cell service, I might try to throw a live feed in there somewhere. So keep your eye out for it, I guess. Also, for those of you that aren't aware, as a last second thing, this weekend, the FLW Tour and the BASS Bassmaster Elite Series are both fishing tournaments this weekend. So if you like fishing and that kind of stuff, they do live feeds on both of their websites. So you can go to the FLW website on Saturday, Sunday, and watch from 8:30 to 12 Eastern time, I believe it is. And then you can also go to Bassmaster website and watch their live feed. They do theirs Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and they do, I think it's 8 to 12, and then or 8 to 11, and then 12 to 2, I think is how they do theirs. But that's a good opportunity to watch these guys kind of do what they do, and the coverage is pretty good, generally speaking. You can learn some stuff and see some stuff and observe, and gives you a different point of view. So more people that get involved in watching that kind of stuff, the more likely maybe we can get something someday eventually thrown on cable TV and be able to watch it live and have a good product to actually be able to learn from during these tournaments and stuff. So if you're interested in it, they'll be up online this weekend, so keep your eye out for it. Have a good night, guys. Thank you.